18th to 19th December 1944, Stavelot to Spa, Belgium, Kampfgruppe Peiper of the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte SS, Adolf Hitler vs. United States Transportation Corps, truck companies, Joachim Peiper and African-American and white drivers, many from units that had run the Red Ball Express convoys earlier in the campaign. Core facts. The Tiger II heavy tanks in Peiper's force burn about 2 US gallons of fuel per mile on the road, and German planners have allocated enough fuel for roughly 90 miles of armoured movement for the offensive, not enough to reach Antwerp without seizing Allied stocks. Snow falls thick on the narrow road east of Stavelot. Tiger II tanks of Kampfgruppe Peiper stand nose-to-tail engines idling in temperatures well below freezing. Crews watch fuel gauges drop while they wait for the blocked columns ahead to move. The main United States First Army fuel dumps around Spa and Francorchamps lie only a few tens of kilometers beyond the Amblève Valley. Every minute spent stationary burns fuel that the timetable assumes will carry the spearhead toward the Meuse. North and west of the Amblève, American 2.5-ton trucks roll under urgent orders. Transportation Corps companies, many manned by African-American soldiers who had driven Red Ball Express routes from Normandy into France in the summer and autumn of 1944, now reverse the flow. They load fuel trailers, drums and jerry cans at forward depots around Spa, Stavelot, Malmedy and Francorchamps, together with pallets of artillery shells. They haul gasoline and ammunition away before German spearheads can arrive, moving in blackout conditions along icy roads towards safer areas near Liège and Verviers. The offensive Adolf Hitler, designed to cut Allied supply lines, now runs into an American system able to withdraw its forward stocks while still under attack. German planning assumes that armoured spearheads will reach the Meuse in about 3 days and will then need captured Allied fuel to drive farther. American commanders order the same fuel stocks moved or destroyed first. Engineers blow key bridges behind retreating infantry. Truck convoys and rail movements empty most of several million gallons stored in the large First Army dumps north of Stavelot and Malmedy over several days, leaving about 124,000 gallons to be set alight near Stavelot as a roadblock against German tanks. When German crews finally see the columns of smoke above the valley, they are watching fuel burn that was meant for their engines. Kampfgruppe Peiper fights its way into Stavelot on the 18th of December. The previous day near Honsfeld, its men had overrun American positions and seized about 50,000 US gallons of gasoline from captured dumps, forcing prisoners to refuel their tanks at gunpoint. Now as they press west, they find that the main depots ahead have been emptied or destroyed. Engines idle again, while reconnaissance reports more bridges ahead, demolished by American engineers, and United States units retaking ground on the flanks. Heavy consumption in deep snow and traffic jams quickly eats into both the original allocation and the captured fuel. German tank commanders look out across the white fields and stalled vehicles and see the practical result of the fuel battle. The depots they were supposed to capture have been evacuated, the remaining gasoline has been burned into black smoke, and the American trucks that carried it away are already moving west to new positions. The armoured spearhead stands in the Ardennes snow at the end of its fuel and at the end of its road. 16th December 1944 to late January 1945, the Ardennes forests of eastern Belgium and Luxembourg. Army Group B under Generalfeldmarschall Walter Model faces 12th United States Army Group under Lieutenant General Omar Bradley. German planners know that their armoured spearheads have enough fuel for roughly 90 miles of road movement, far short of the distance to Antwerp, without capturing Allied stocks on the way. Darkness still covers the front when German guns open at 5:30 hours on 16th December. Around 30 divisions strike across roughly 80 miles of snowbound ridge and valley. 6th Panzer Army under SS Oberstgruppenführer Sepp Dietrich carries the main weight in the north. 5th Panzer Army under General Hasso von Manteuffel drives toward Bastogne and the Meuse crossings. 7th Army shields the southern flank. The force is smaller than Adolf Hitler first demanded because tanks, crews and above all fuel no longer exist in the quantities his staff once assumed. By late 1944, German fuel production has fallen to a fraction of its early war level. Refined petroleum output for all theatres now stands in the low hundreds of thousands of tons each month, rather than the several 100,000 tons available before the strategic bombing offensive. What reaches the west travels by night in battered tank cars and road convoys that try to avoid Allied aircraft. The armoured divisions go into the Ardennes offensive, knowing that their existing fuel will carry them only a limited distance and that they must seize American dumps to keep moving. Horse-drawn wagons still follow the tanks and half-tracks. Many German formations in the west rely on thousands of horses for artillery and supply, while their truck parks never fully recover from losses during the Normandy and Falaise battles. The offensive, therefore, begins with a sharp imbalance between modern armour at the front and traditional transport behind it. Across the line, United States First Army and Third Army have driven from the Normandy beaches through France and Belgium to the German frontier. Ports in Normandy and on the Channel now pour vehicles, ammunition, rations and fuel onto the continent. Forward depots and fuel parks around Spa, Malmedy, Liège and other Belgian nodes hold several million gallons of gasoline and large stocks of artillery ammunition, originally assembled for a winter offensive into Germany rather than for a sudden defense of the Ardennes. Yet the American front in the Ardennes looks thin on paper. In the so-called quiet sector, only a handful of divisions stretch over some 80 to 90 miles of forested hills, because senior planners expect major German action elsewhere. That apparent weakness masks the depth behind them. The communications zone controls scores of truck companies and specialized highway transport units. Earlier in the campaign, the Red Ball Express alone operated thousands of vehicles. By early 1945, the motor transport service in Europe directs close to 200 truck companies. Railway engineer battalions continue to repair and extend rail lines toward the Meuse and the German border. Victory for Germany would split the Allied armies cross, the Meuse seize Antwerp, and open a chance to force a political settlement in the west. Failure will burn through armoured reserves and trained infantry that German industry and training schools can no longer replace. American supply, although strained by distance from the ports and by winter weather, still counts stockpiles in weeks of fighting and fleets of serviceable vehicles. From the first hours, the Ardennes fighting becomes a contest between an offensive that must capture fuel and road space to maintain its timetable, and a defensive system that can empty or destroy its own forward depots faster than German. Armour can reach them. American logistics begin to turn the German thrust into a dead end long before the front lines close. 15th December 1944. From the depot belt around Liège to the thin American front at the Losheim Gap. In the East Army Group B, under General Feldmarschall Walter Model, finishes assembling 6th Panzer Army. In the West 12th United States Army Group under Lieutenant General Omar Bradley oversees a front that planners still call quiet. German staff officers know that their armoured spearheads have only enough fuel for roughly 90 miles of road movement, not enough to reach Antwerp without capturing Allied stocks on the way. East of the Our River German divisions complete their concentration under strict camouflage. 6th Panzer Army brings together 4 Waffen-SS Panzer divisions and supporting Volksgrenadier divisions for the northern thrust. Fuel has been stockpiled for the opening phase of the offensive, but deliveries have been limited by Allied bombing and transport shortages. By mid-December, Panzer units carry most of their fuel in the tanks and vehicles they will take into the attack and are instructed to rely on captured Allied dumps once they break through the American line. On the American side, senior commanders treat the Ardennes as a rest area. First, United States Army spreads battle-worn veterans and inexperienced divisions across a long front from the Losheim Gap down toward Luxembourg. The positions are thin in infantry armour and artillery when measured against what the German order of battle will reveal. Behind that front, however, lie substantial resources. Forward fuel depots for First Army are grouped in the Spa-Stavelot Malmedy area, where 2 major dumps together hold on the order of 3 million gallons of gasoline for future operations. Further west around Liège, additional fuel and ammunition parks support the whole northern wing of 12th Army Group. These installations tie directly into the wider theatre network. Rail lines from the ports at Antwerp and the Channel lead inland to Liège, making it a key nodal point. The communications zone controls large motor transport assets and many truck companies, including organizations that had run the Red Ball Express convoys earlier in the campaign and can redirect them quickly to short-haul work between depots and truckheads. Pipeline units are already pushing lines eastward and are prepared to extend flow toward the German frontier once the next Allied offensive begins. The German timetable calls for a rapid drive crossings over the hour. In the first day, gains through the American infantry positions in the next stages, then a push toward the Meuse within the first 4 days. It assumes dense cloud will keep Allied aircraft grounded and that American staff officers will react slowly to a major attack in a sector they have considered secondary. If the plan works, forward depots around Spa and Liège are expected to fall largely intact to the leading Panzer formations. Yet from the first hours of the offensive, the contest is not only along the foxholes and roadblocks, but also in the depth of the supply system. When German artillery opens at 5:30 on the morning of 16th December and infantry move forward under cover of darkness, the thin American line bends and in some places breaks, but the main fuel and ammunition installations remain unhit. American engineers hold demolition plans for key bridges. Truck companies can reverse their routes within hours. Rail units can divert trains away from threatened junctions. German spearheads begin to move west into the forest, but every delay at a roadblock, ford, or demolished bridge reduces the distance they can cover on the fuel already in their tanks. The battle is already becoming a race between how far German armor can drive and how fast American logistics can empty or destroy the depots that lie ahead of them. 18th to 24th December 1944, the roads around Spa and the crossroads at Bastogne. Transportation Corps truck companies, the 101st Airborne Division, and the staff of Third U.S. Army. On 17th December, Transportation Corps drivers receive urgent orders to clear forward fuel and ammunition dumps in the threatened sector. African-American soldiers from quartermaster truck units, including elements of the 3368th Quartermaster Truck Group, take to the icy roads before dawn. They back 2.5-ton trucks under fuel trailers and stacks of boxed artillery shells in depots around Spa, Stavelot and Malmedy, while the sound of German guns rolls over the ridges. Tires slip on frozen curves, engines labour in sub-zero air, and reports come in of German patrols appearing near key junctions. Convoys run under blackout toward Liège and other rear areas, pulling as much fuel and ammunition as possible out of the path of the advancing Panzer columns. At Bastogne, the 101st Airborne Division reaches the town on the 18th and 19th of December, with only the supplies its own transport can bring forward. The division's artillery, tank and infantry units enter the perimeter, knowing that their stocks of food, fuel and shells are limited and must be stretched. By 20th December, German armour and infantry have closed the main roads. Batteries begin the siege with normal fire missions, and then are ordered to cut their daily expenditure sharply as ammunition runs down. Quartermasters issue winter clothing and blankets as best they can. Many men share coverings in cellars and dugouts while snow drifts around the town. On 19th December, Lieutenant General George Patton attends the conference at Verdun and states that Third U.S. Army can attack north within 3 days. His staff in Luxembourg and Metz then work through the night to turn that promise into a movement order. Supply officers reroute fuel and ammunition from existing depots in Luxembourg and Belgium, establish new traffic control posts along the roads toward Ardennes and Bastogne, and give priority in fuel and maintenance support to the 4th Armoured Division and the infantry corps that will follow. The tanks and half-tracks that turn north do so with full fuel tanks and supported by a functioning chain of ordnance and quartermaster installations that have never stopped receiving matériel from the ports. On the German side, tank crews increasingly treat each jerry can as a scarce asset. Reports from the field describe vehicles held back from local movements to conserve fuel engines, started only when absolutely necessary, and armoured groups waiting, while staff officers search for captured stocks or diverted deliveries that do not arrive in time. Low cloud and snow keep most aircraft grounded until the 23rd of December. When the weather finally clears, C-47 transports of IX Troop Carrier Command begin flying resupply missions to Bastogne. Over the next days, they drop loads of ammunition rations and medical supplies into the encircled perimeter. Drivers and infantrymen on the ground watch the parachutes open over the town and understand that the supply line can now run through the air even while German forces still block the roads. Through this period, American logistics bend under the sudden strain, but continue to operate. Depots are thinned out rather than lost intact. Truck routes are changed rather than cut completely, and air transport takes over part of the burden, when weather allows. German logistics, built on limited fuel stocks and vulnerable road columns, grow weaker with every day of slow progress in the snow. The contrast between those two systems helps turn the German drive toward the Meuse into a stalled advance that cannot be pushed farther once the fuel and ammunition run out. 20th to 26th December 1944. From the Amblève Valley to the approaches of the Meuse near Dinant, Kampfgruppe Peiper and the armoured spearheads of 5th Panzer Army push west against the weight of 1st and 3rd United States Armies. Single-track forest roads become arteries clogged with steel. Blown bridges at places such as Trois Ponts force detours and long halts while engineers search for crossings that still stand. Kampfgruppe Peiper has already seized a large American fuel dump near Honsfeld and Bullingen, earlier in the advance, taking on the order of 50,000 gallons of gasoline. Yet much of that gain is burned away while columns sit motionless, in queues on the frozen roads. By the days before Christmas, the group is concentrated around Gleize, short of fuel, and facing American forces closing in from several directions. American engineers destroy key spans over the Amblève and Salm rivers as they fall back, leaving German armour to face flooded fords and cratered approaches. Truck companies and railway units move large quantities of fuel and ammunition away from forward depots in the northern sector, thinning out stocks that German intelligence had marked as objectives. Rail tank cars carrying aviation gasoline are routed away from exposed junctions around Liège, and pipeline units adjust flow to support the axes chosen for Third Army's counterstroke. Cloud and snow cover the Ardennes until the 23rd of December. When the weather lifts, Allied fighter bombers and medium bombers begin to fly in strength over the battlefield. They attack road columns, bridges and supply parks, turning many of the horse-drawn wagon lines and soft-skinned fuel vehicles on the German side into wreckage along the verges. From this point, much of German fuel and ammunition expenditure takes place under direct observation from the air and is subject to immediate attack whenever movement can be seen. At Bastogne, the garrison begins to receive air-dropped supplies once the sky clears. C-47 transports of IX Troop Carrier Command deliver loads of ammunition rations and medical stores over several days, easing the worst shortages inside the perimeter. South of the town ground, convoys of Third Army form up to exploit any corridor that armoured spearheads can open. Artillery supporting the drive north fires heavy missions, knowing that depots in Luxembourg and Belgium continue to push shells and fuel forward along restored and newly organised routes. On the German side, reports from armoured and corps headquarters by the 24th of December speak of spearheads that have reached close to the Meuse, but have outrun their supply lines. Fuel shortages and delays at destroyed bridges and roadblocks mean that tanks which stand within a few miles of the river lack the fuel to exploit further. Commanders such as General Hasso von Manteuffel signal that the advance can no longer be driven forward toward the Meuse in the way the original plan demanded. Clear skies and reopened roads give back mobility to the side that controls both the air and the main supply network on the ground. German armoured groups find themselves stalled short of the river with empty fuel tanks and growing losses, while American logistics continue to feed men, guns and vehicles into the narrowing gap. The thrust that was meant to break through to the Meuse instead reaches the end of its logistic reach in the snow of the Ardennes. 24th to 26th December 1944. La Gleize and the Celle sector, remnants of 1st SS Panzer Division and 2nd Panzer Division, against advancing United States divisions of 1st and 3rd. United States Armies. Kampfgruppe Peiper holds a shrinking perimeter around La Gleize. Its surviving tanks and armoured vehicles still turn over, but almost all fuel is gone and ammunition has been heavily spent. On the night of 23rd to 24th December, Joachim Peiper orders his men to destroy or abandon their vehicles and break out on foot to the east. Around 800 survivors make the attempt through snow and encirclement, leaving behind well over 100 armoured vehicles of 1st SS Panzer Division scattered in and around the village and along the roads that led to it. Farther west elements of 2nd Panzer Division reach their farthest point near Celles and Foy-Notre-Dame on 24 December. There, short of fuel and under growing pressure from United States armor and artillery, the advance stalls. American counterattacks from several directions cut into the forward elements and forced German crews to abandon many of their remaining tanks and vehicles rather than see them captured intact. General Hasso von Manteuffel, commanding 5th Panzer Army, signals to higher headquarters that his armoured forces have reached the practical limit of their advance. Fuel stocks have been exhausted, resupply convoys have not been able to keep pace, and the leading elements now stand close to the Meuse without the means to exploit further. Army Group B, under Walter Model Forwards, requests to change the mission from further offensive action to establishing a defensive line. Adolf Hitler initially refuses to authorize a general withdrawal, even as the operational situation deteriorates. On 26 December, Combat Command B of 4th Armored Division of 3rd United States Army breaks through to Bastogne from the south, opening a land corridor to the encircled town. Behind the tanks, United States supply units move forward with ammunition rations, fuel, and medical stores drawn from depots in Luxembourg and Belgium that have continued to receive shipments from the ports and rear areas throughout the crisis. German armoured crews who have had to abandon or burn their vehicles in the snow now face an opponent whose columns still move with full fuel tanks and ready guns. Around La Gleize, the rows of wrecked and deserted German tanks and armoured vehicles mark the point where the Ardennes offensive reaches the end of its logistic reach and cannot be pushed any farther against the growing weight of American forces and supply. 3rd to 28th January 1945, from Houffalize down toward St. Vith, 1st United States Army attacks south, 3rd United States Army attacks north, and British forces hold and support the northern shoulder of the salient. The German wedge in the Ardennes begins to close under pressure from both sides. On 16th January, elements of 1st Army and 3rd Army meet at Houffalize. The link-up cuts the German salient in two and marks the turning point from containing the Bulge to compressing it. In the following days, American units continue to push eastward village by village, while German formations withdraw toward the west wall. Rail and road repair units follow close behind the combat troops, restoring routes toward Bastogne and St. Vith so that supplies can move forward over ground that had been under fire only weeks before. As the front straightens, the American logistics system recovers its rhythm. Ports at Antwerp and along the Channel continue to discharge cargo. The great depot areas around Liège and Verdun resume their role as the main hubs feeding 1st, 3rd and 9th Armies. Ordnance depots replace much of the equipment lost in December, and tank losses are made good across the theatre. By early 45 holdings of medium tanks in the European theatre are moving back toward the strength authorized before the Ardennes battles. On the German side, by early February, only a few hundred tanks and assault guns remain operational on the entire Western Front, and the Panzer force in the west has been reduced to a fraction of its former strength. The withdrawal from the Ardennes leaves a trail of wrecked and abandoned German armour. Studies after the battle count several hundred German tanks, tank destroyers and assault guns lost in the campaign, many of them left behind for lack of fuel, spare parts or recovery vehicles. German casualties in the Ardennes and associated fighting run to many tens of thousands of men. For Army Group B, the offensive has spent irreplaceable armoured strength and manpower. No comparable strategic reserve remains to be assembled in the west for another large offensive. Behind the American front communications zone, engineers and railway troops work through the winter to restore and improve the transport net. Rail centres around Liège return to heavy use, and by early February deliveries by rail and truck to the armies reach record levels for the campaign. Pipeline units extend bulk fuel lines forward again toward the German border, linking the ports and rear depots directly to new decanting points close behind the front. The same organizations that had hurried supplies out of threatened depots in December now push fresh stocks 200 kilometers farther east in preparation for the next advance. The Ardennes offensive thus becomes the last German attempt to break American supply in northwest Europe. Instead of shattering the Allied system, it exposes how dependent German operations have become on limited fuel stocks and fragile transport, and how resilient American logistics are once ports, railways, pipelines, and truck fleets are fully in motion again. In February, snow still lies deep over the Ardennes hills. Wrecked German tanks and assault guns stand silent along the roads and in the fields where they were knocked out or abandoned. American columns pass them without slowing fuel tankers, and ammunition trucks mixed among the tanks and infantry carriers heading toward the Rhine. German steel stands motionless, while American supply continues to roll forward, turning the last Western gamble into a dead end shaped by logistics.